Before dawn touches the Louisiana horizon, 13 men drift into the bayou confident, wealthy, certain of their own power. Their pirogues cut across water so dark it feels like ink, while the cypress trees loom overhead like ancient judges silently waiting for a verdict. Leading them is a single man, quiet, unreadable. A man every planter depends on, yet none truly sees. By nightfall, only one of them will crawl back out of that swamp alive. You can almost hear it, his ragged breath, his boots sinking in the mud, his voice trembling as he tells the authorities a story no one fully believes. A story of accidents, chaos, and a darkness in the bayou that swallowed the others whole. But the deeper you go into the official testimonies, the more one question claws at you. Did something hunt these men? Or did one of their own finally stop running? And if someone planned this, why did he wait until that night? Why those men? Something in this story wasn't written in ink. It was written in blood. Before we dive into this unraveling nightmare, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive into the forgotten corners of history. And if you're listening right now, drop the name of your city in the comments. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Alright, take a breath, because once we step into this bayou, every sound, every shadow, and every choice matters. The canyon opened like a cracked jaw beneath the morning haze, its jagged limestone teeth catching the weak sunlight as 3 men approached on foot, boots crunching over gravel that whispered of countless forgotten passages. Garrick led them, broad-shouldered and steady, his gaze fixed on the narrowing gorge ahead where shadows clung to stone, forming shapes that shifted subtly as if alive and waiting. Behind him followed Orrin, carrying ropes and hammered spikes, each tool clinking softly with each stride, his nerves hidden beneath practiced calm learned through years of descent into dangerous earth. The last man, Vale, gripped a torch unlit but ready, eyes sharp, sensing something strange in the air. The canyon breathed cold drafts that drifted upward despite the warming sun. They searched for Bram, a seasoned scout who vanished 2 nights earlier after venturing into this forbidden gorge marked only on old maps as the Maw, a name given without exaggeration. Garrick halted near the entrance, studying claw-like scrapes along one wall, noticing they appeared too deliberate, as though carved by hands rather than weathered by time. Orrin crouched beside scattered fragments of stone, lifting a piece that bore soot marks indicating friction or heat, suggesting Bram had used fire to see deeper inside. Vale scanned the ledges overhead, spotting faint tattered fibers, fragments of rope likely severed abruptly rather than worn down, hinting at something swift cutting Bram's lifeline. The canyon interior loomed ahead, walls narrowing into a long slit of shadow that seemed to swallow sound, turning their footsteps into muted thuds fading before echoing back. Garrick stepped forward, placing a hand on the stone surface, feeling an unnatural warmth beneath its rough texture, as if something pulsed faintly behind the rock. Orrin set hardware aside and unspooled rope, securing its anchor around a protruding boulder shaped like a weathered skull, a shape unsettling enough to silence comment. Vale finally lit the torch, flame flaring bright orange before settling into a steady glow that revealed dust motes swirling in slow spirals guided by unseen currents. They moved deeper, passing a point where daylight bent strangely, filtering through cracks in thin beams that looked fractured, like broken glass arranged by unseen hands. Garrick paused, kneeling to examine footprints half smudged in dust 3 steps forward, then a deeper impression, as if Bram suddenly braced himself before being pulled violently sideways. Vale raised the torch, revealing a narrow break in the canyon wall, edges smooth and circular, too perfect to be natural, as though something bored a tunnel straight through. Orrin tested the opening with his axe handle, noting the stone still warm despite the cool canyon air, heat radiating outward as though freshly exposed. Garrick moved inside first, sliding sideways along the tight passage, boots scraping against smooth stone while the torchlight cast long shadows stretching ahead like reaching arms. The tunnel curved then widened into a chamber shaped like a hollow rib cage, walls ridged in patterns resembling ancient bones fused with hardened minerals. Vale scanned the ground, spotting a torn sleeve bearing Bram's stitching pattern, edges charred, confirming he had been here and that he encountered something producing extreme heat. Orrin's breath caught when he noticed deep parallel furrows across the floor, as if something heavy and talon had dragged itself in spirals around the chamber. Garrick knelt to inspect the marks, noting crushed stone at the channel edges, indicating weight far greater than any man or known beast living above ground. A faint vibration trembled beneath their boots, rising through the floor in steady pulses similar to a heartbeat echoing from somewhere deep within the rock. Vale tightened his grip on the torch, watching flame waver as air shifted, carrying hints of burnt minerals and a strange metallic scent like heated iron cooled too quickly. Oren turned toward another opening at the far end, its interior glowing faintly red like embers hidden behind cracked earth awaiting a gust to rekindle. Garrick approached cautiously, peering inside to see a tunnel descending steeply, each step carved smooth as if by hands capable of precision and immense force. Vale leaned beside him, noticing strands of melted fabric fused to the wall, Bram's gear unmistakably marked by scorch patterns that suggested sudden intense heat. The floor vibrated again, stronger now, causing dust to slide across stone in thin streams converging toward the descending tunnel as if drawn by breath. Oren steadied himself, muttering that whatever lived below remained active, its presence stirring enough air and heat to reshape the tunnels whenever it moved. Garrick inhaled slowly, reading the signs Bram had fled downward, forced deeper into the canyon's heart where light failed and stone grew dangerously warm. Vale stepped forward, flame brightening as if reacting to heat rising from below, casting elongated silhouettes across the chamber walls that seemed to watch them enter. The chamber trembled faintly, dust falling in small cascades from the ceiling, making clear that whatever lay within the canyon did not sleep. It listened, waited, and breathed beneath stone. The black hollow rose from the valley floor like a scar carved by giants, its towering cliffs curving inward to form a natural funnel where wind gathered and twisted with unnatural intelligence and unsettling rhythm. Foreman approached the threshold, Yarek leading with a steel spear across his back, his stride steady despite the sharp currents pushing grit across the ground in swirling, restless spirals. Behind him strode Fen, heavy-set but unshaken, carrying the iron-bound pack containing tools they might require if the hollow matched the terrifying tales told by wanderers passing through remote settlements. The third was Lorne, sharp-eyed and quiet, gripping a lantern reinforced with metal guards, its glass thick enough to withstand flying debris common in this cursed region of shifting winds. The last man, Eric, kept his gloved hand close to the long knife at his hip, senses tuned to every sound, already suspicious of the strange metallic ringing echoing faintly within the canyon. Black Hollow had taken men before, swallowing them beneath storms of dust so dense that rescue parties returned with shredded clothing and memories too fractured to recount clearly. Yarek halted near a toppled pillar of stone, kneeling to examine deep grooves etched into its surface, marks appearing carved intentionally, their curvature reminiscent of blades dragged repeatedly against hardened rock. Fen crouched beside him, running thick fingers along the grooves, feeling smooth edges that suggested precision no storm could create, implying something alive moved through the hollow with purpose. Lorne lifted the lantern toward the cliff walls, revealing faint streaks of dried black residue smeared along the rock faces, forming trails pointing inward like paths deliberately marked. Eric watched dust whirl upward from the ground, shaping into thin coils that twisted briefly into figures resembling human silhouettes before scattering again into chaotic fragments. The wind shifted, releasing a low metallic hum vibrating through the men's boots, as though something enormous exhaled behind the cliffs, stirring fine particles across the valley floor. Yarek advanced, motioning the others to follow deeper into the gorge where the wind thickened, each gust carrying sharp flecks of mineral that stung skin despite thick clothing. Fen narrowed his eyes as the air shimmered ahead, bending light in strange waves, producing illusions of distant figures moving just beyond visibility then dissolving without footprints or sound. Lorne stepped closer to the canyon wall, noticing scratch marks arranged in repeating patterns, each set forming 3 parallel lines accompanied by faint indentations resembling knuckle imprints. Eric exhaled slowly, gripping his knife tighter as he recognized the mark signs Bram himself once taught them to interpret, warnings carved by men hunted through treacherous terrain. The ground trembled faintly beneath them, causing small stones to rattle across the path, their vibrations rising in steady rhythm like giant gears rotating beneath the earth. Yarek motioned for silence, listening as the metallic hum deepened, resonating through the canyon with a pulsing cadence matching something vast moving methodically through unseen caverns. Fen scanned the cliffs overhead, noticing thin slivers of metal embedded between natural layers of stone, glinting as if reflecting light from sources hidden deep below. Lorne lifted the lantern higher, revealing a narrow passage branching off the main path, its entrance shaped unnaturally smooth as though carved by tools or claws crafted from steel. Eric approached the opening, feeling a sudden blast of cold air mixed with metallic scent, sharp enough to sting his nostrils and raise gooseflesh across his arms. Yarrick examined the ground near the entrance, discovering fragments of broken gear, bent hooks, torn straps, scorched cloth, items unmistakably belonging to Bran's missing scouting partner. Fen whispered that the wind carried whispers now, faint murmurs weaving through shifting currents like voices echoing from distant chambers where men should never tread. Lorne steadied the lantern as shadows danced along the passage walls, forming shapes of broad shoulders and elongated limbs moving in a natural rhythm before flickering out. Eric stepped inside first, boots scraping over metallic grains scattered across the floor, each grain glinting like filings left behind after blades sharpened against stone. Yarrick followed close behind, feeling vibrations intensify as warm currents drifted upward from below, carrying faint mechanical ticking like hidden gears turning slowly through darkness. Fen slipped into the passage, gripping his hammer tightly, eyes adjusting to faint red glow pulsing deeper within, growing brighter with each step they descended. Lorne brought the rear, glancing back once toward the entrance as wind outside roared and then abruptly ceased, sealing the hollow in unnatural silence. Eric raised his knife defensively as silhouettes flickered ahead, shapes moving with metallic reflections across their limbs, their motion too fluid and deliberate to be illusions. Yarrick steadied his breath, recognizing the truth forming in his mind. The hollow was not merely stone shaped by storms but a place where something forged its own relentless metal-born offspring. Fen braced himself as the red glow intensified, revealing a cavern opening ahead where movement echoed like breathing steel preparing to confront the living. The plateau rose from the desert like an immense stone altar, flat-topped and silent, its edges carved by centuries of wind carrying whispers older than any settlement standing within 100 miles. 3 men climbed its steep face, Thane at the lead, gripping the rough stone with hands hardened by years patrolling barren frontiers where maps ended and stories began turning into warnings. Behind him came Rule, lean and quiet, carrying a coil of rope and a pack filled with chisels, stakes, and the journal they found buried beside remnants of a collapsed watchpost. The last was Halden, broad-chested and vigilant, his hammer strapped across his back, boots striking the rock with purposeful rhythm as he scanned shifting sands below for signs of disturbance. The plateau top stretched wide and barren, dust arranged in circular patterns as though stirred recently by heavy movement, yet no tracks led away from the strange formations. Thane paused near the first ring, kneeling to sweep dust aside and reveal carved grooves beneath, arranged like symbols he recognized faintly from Forbidden's frontier records. Rule leaned close, studying the grooves, tracing their pattern with cautious fingers, realizing they matched no script of known tribes or old kingdoms documented by veteran explorers. Halden examined broken fragments scattered around the ring's, shards of hardened clay, some blackened, others etched with ridges resembling fingerprints left by something immensely large. Wind swept across the plateau, carrying bass-like vibrations that hummed through the stone beneath their feet, too steady and rhythmic to be natural desert gusts. Thane raised his head, listening as the vibration deepened, sending faint tremors through the dust rings, shifting grains into new spirals forming before their eyes. Rule set the journal down, flipping to the final entry written by Jaren the missing watchman, describing voices rising from beneath the plateau, urging him to uncover whatever slept below. Halden frowned, studying the ring's center where dust rose in faint columns that twisted gently, forming shapes like reaching hands before dissolving back into nothing. Thane stood slowly, sensing the plateau was not dead stone but a shell covering something ancient with memory long outlasting any man who dared walk upon it. Rule lifted the lantern, revealing cracks along the plateau surface, thin but numerous, forming a web-like network branching outward from each dust ring. Halden knelt, pressing his palm against one crack, recoiling when heat surged upward briefly, followed by faint echoes like distant pounding against buried stone walls. Thane signaled for caution while stepping toward the largest ring, noticing its center depressed slightly, as though weight once bore down there repeatedly in ritualistic fashion. Rule examined dried scorch marks around the depression, each one curved subtly, matching patterns only produced by objects rotating with immense speed and friction. Halden turned as the wind shifted again, this time bringing a low rumble rising from beneath them, deep enough to make their bones vibrate subtly. Thane steadied his breath, scanning the plateau edge where he spotted vertical gouges descending the cliff face, marks too uniform for weather erosion or animal claws. Rule approached the gouges, recognizing their spacing matched the grooves on the plateau, suggesting something climbed from below, dragging massive weight with practiced ease. Halden gripped his hammer, feeling the ground throb beneath him, steady pulses aligning like a heart beating deep inside a stone giant awakening after long slumber. Thane stepped back from the ring as dust lifted again, forming coherent shapes, broad shoulders, elongated limbs before collapsing as the tremors intensified beneath their boots. Rule heard faint murmurs rise from cracks, voices overlapping like echoes traveling through hollow chambers carved by hands or claws centuries before men recorded history. Halden's gaze shifted to another ring forming spontaneously nearby, dust swirling inward as if drawn by unseen breath rising through cracks widening imperceptibly. Thane knelt beside the forming ring, noticing grains vibrate faster, aligning into new patterns that seemed to rearrange deliberately like language forming before comprehension. Rule opened Jaren's journal again, realizing the symbols carved in the sketches mirrored those forming beneath their feet, as though the plateau responded to their presence. Halden moved closer, preparing for movement as the ground trembled harder, reverberating upward like booming footsteps approaching from unfathomable depths. Thane exhaled slowly, recognizing the truth the missing watchman had recorded. The plateau did not store secrets. It rehearsed them, reenacting memories of what once lived below. Rule steadied the lantern as cracks widened, releasing heat and faint metallic echoes like chains unraveling or armor shifting across ancient corridors unseen. Halden prepared himself as the dust rings tightened, trembling rapidly, signaling that whatever memory the plateau held was about to rise into the world of living men again. The ridge loomed above the valley like a colossal spine, each jagged peak rising sharply against the dusk as if the land itself strained upward, preparing to inhale after centuries of forced silence. 3 men climbed its winding path, Dren leading with a torch tucked beneath his arm, his silhouette cutting a determined shape against the darkening horizon as loose stones shifted beneath his boots. Behind him marched Corin, carrying a bundled coil of iron hooks and climbing stakes, their clinks echoing off the rock walls like faint warnings from unseen watchers hidden in shadowy crevices. The final man, Breck, heavyset yet vigilant, supported a long staff reinforced with metal rings, each strike against stone releasing a hollow thrum that vanished into the growing night. The ridge was feared across every settlement for reasons whispered only among seasoned wanderers, men who once heard strange thunder beneath the soil when no storm stalked the skies. Dren paused near a narrow ledge, studying the ground where deep grooves intersected in deliberate arcs, forming patterns too controlled to be erosion, too precise to be coincidence. Corin knelt beside him, brushing away dust to reveal thin scorch marks arranged like a curved spine, each segment perfectly spaced, seeming to pulse faintly in torchlight. Breck frowned, recognizing the marks from old hunters' tales describing an underground creature vast enough to bend stone and leave heat where its body pressed through rock. The wind shifted abruptly, carrying a low, hollow moan sweeping across the ridge like distant breath dragged through ancient tunnels hidden beneath the mountain's hardened shell. Dren tightened his grip on the torch, watching flame bend sharply toward the ridge's heart as though drawn by an unseen current, exhaling from deep underground. Corin examined thin cracks running along the stone face, each filled with faint metallic residue that reflected torchlight like dull silver flecks left by buried machinery. Breck dragged the staff gently across the stone, feeling vibration rise through the ground in steady pulses, matching the rhythm of something titanic stirring beneath. Dren advanced carefully toward a plateau where the ridge flattened briefly, dust swirling in small spirals forming shapes resembling broad shoulders and long arms before dissolving. Corin crouched near the center, spotting footprints belonging to Bram, the missing trail runner recognized by his distinct 3-notch sole pattern left on his custom boots. Breck stepped closer, noticing how the prints deepened suddenly, as if Bram had been halted mid-stride by something immense pressing upward through the stone beneath him. Dren swept the torch over the plateau edge, revealing a long fissure cracked open, its interior glowing faintly with heat, pulsing like embers breathing beneath packed earth. Corin leaned down, feeling warm air push upward in rhythmic intervals, like waves of breath rising from a massive creature slumbering mere yards below the surface. Breck steadied his staff as a deep groan echoed from within the fissure, resonating through the ridge and into their bones with slow, deliberate authority. Dren knelt, touching the stone gently, recoiling when heat surged in short bursts, warming his palm-like contact with the living ribcage shielding something awake beneath. Corin examined fractured stones scattered near the opening, some etched with claw-like indentations forming crescents too symmetrical to be caused by random shifting earth. Breck listened to the vibrations deepening, each one heavier, slower, carrying intention as though the ridge responded to their presence, recognizing intruders treading its buried anatomy. Dren motioned for silence as dust lifted into thin columns again, bending toward the fissure, pulled by unseen currents behaving like breath steadily inhaling through stone. Corin flipped Bram's recovered satchel open, removing a page torn hastily from a notebook, showing sketches of the ridge inscribed with warnings half-finished before panic interrupted. Breck read the scrawled lines describing something enormous shifting beneath him, something that remembered ancient paths carved from stone long before any settlement existed. Dren scanned the plateau as distant thunder rose from below, not sky thunder, but earth thunder rolling upward through layers of rock shaped into long-forgotten corridors. Corin watched the dust rings widen across the plateau, forming spirals identical to the symbols Bram attempted to draw before the ridge caught him unaware. Breck tightened his stance, preparing for upheaval as the fissure widened suddenly, breaking stone with slow precision, emitting heat that carried faint metallic scents. Dren exhaled steadily, understanding Bram's final message: the ridge was not dead terrain but a colossal memory, waking slowly, preparing to surface from depths men feared to imagine. Corin raised the lantern as warm air surged upward in a powerful exhale, dust scattering wildly, marking the beginning of whatever ancient intelligence now stirred. Breck planted his staff firmly, recognizing they stood above a creature or consciousness older than their world's recorded history, patient enough to wait for men to return.